CRT, also known as critical race theory. Kumar Rashad, high school teacher here in Louisville, Kentucky. And there's a lot of discussion on critical race theory and what it is and what it isn't. Critical race theory is a system to identify, really just to connect the past to the present. That's all it really is. It's a tool that connects the past to the present. Critical race theory, also just referred to by its acronym CRT, is a tool that really just is used to connect past racism to our current conditions. That's what that really is. Critical race theory. It was created in the '70s by a group of academians. Most notably is Kimberly Crenshaw, a professor out in California at this point, and really that's critical race theory is is a tool that also gives the voice to the voiceless. And the way I say that is that one of the tenements of critical race theory is counter storytelling. And that's what a lot of people get mad at, because they say that critical race theory is not really based on facts that are documented facts, but more on feeling and emotion, because this counter storytelling is basically a tool that allows underrepresented folks, black folks primarily, to be allowed to tell our story. There are many, there's many times where we have policies in place, and we know the people who put these policies in place may or may not look like us, but for the most part, if they don't look like us, then these, even if they do sometimes, they might not represent us, but there's policies in place that don't represent black folks. And by the majority will say that these policies are good, and they'll have the voices of people who support them. But a lot of times these policies never go through the filter of black folks. So these policies aren't put in front of black folks to think about, to talk about, to even put input on. So then when it actually goes into implementation, black folks tend to have a different story of how their work environment goes than white folks. And so, for example, here in schools, as a black teacher, I'm more likely to be the only black teacher in my school, and oftentimes I'm going to be the only black male teacher almost in any school I'm in. So when it comes to talking about how the different groups of people feel about different policies, my voice is most likely to be the least represented. Counter storytelling takes the underrepresented voices, allows us to express our stories and make conclusions around our own data that is not a reflection of outside data of anyone but us at that point. Of the underrepresented. And that's a really good thing, because a lot of times our studies, scientific studies, don't even have a lot of good information on black folks. Let me give you another example. There are many studies that are done on why black folks aren't doing well in school and education. So many studies around that. But then we have situations where we have a lot of black folks in AP or honors classes, and there are virtually no studies done on how these young black folks are performing in an environment that wasn't designed for them at all. We got to have underrepresented voices, and they need to be put in a format where we could quantify and say, okay, we can make basically our own surveys and how we feel, and have those voices represented, and not just the majority all the time. There's another piece of critical race theory that is called critique of liberalism. And critique of liberalism means that we're not just happy to embrace the all lives matter definition, or because a lot of times when you're in the struggle, people, you want to talk about your experiences as a black person, or a person who's, a black or brown person, primarily underrepresented, Native American, Pacific Island in some case, but you want to represent who you are and how you feel, and make assumptions about that. But then someone wants to turn that conversation into an all lives matter. Like, yeah, I know that you and your people have gone through this pain, but what about, for example, what about people with disabilities? Why aren't we including them into your conversation? What about the LGBTQ committee? Why aren't we including them into the conversations? What about, why are we just specifically focusing on race when there's so many other things that are going on? We should put everybody together. All lives matter. And that's and we're that's liberalism, that's over liberalism, and that's what we're critiquing. It's like, no, it's not an all lives matter state. We don't like that. This is, oftentimes the all lives matter, the people who want to say that it's not about race, it's about everything else, are, we find are hurting the cause. Because instead of us being able to look at ourselves inside our own community, look at our own people and say, this is what we need to fix, we're being bombarded with what everyone else is thinking about us, what everyone else says that we should do, what everyone else is telling us to do, instead of doing our thing, and just doing what we want to do. And that's the critique of liberalism, because there's so many different things that affect us specifically, and we need to, address those. I can go on forever, man. But a lot of times they're talking about the school system and how they always put out a report every year how black folks are, doing terrible in school, in this failing by. They call it a achievement gap. And black folks, males especially, are always at the bottom of that list of the achievement gap, behind, white males usually at the top of the list, usually up there with Asians. Yep. So and so it's contradictory to put so much focus on us not doing well in school, but not want to provide the resources to help us do well in school. We could talk about this achievement gap, but if the solution is that black folks feel better when they're taught their own history, then that's what's needed. It's the truth. I mean, it's in all the studies. All the studies say that, if you see if a black child sees a black teacher, by the time they hit third grade, they're 30% more likely to go to college. If they see more than two before they hit middle school, it doubles their chances to 50%. Almost doubles their chances to 50% of absolutely going to college or some type of higher learning. And that's because, our students want to see images of themselves. They want to see, themselves in their teachers. They want to see themselves in their principals. They want to see themselves in all those positions out there, that they may not have seen before. It just wasn't too long ago that black folks didn't think they could be president. And now we see that. So we got to take it a little bit closer to home so that people can see successful people who look like them right now. And that's very important. But, our schools don't have that. And critical race theory says that our black students are suffering because we don't have representation. Again, we don't have that voice. Our voices aren't being represented, just like the adults who are black and brown's voices aren't being represented in the policies that are created to disenfranchise us and our students. Those same policies are really pushed towards the kids who don't have representation, even though they have really good ideas, but we don't look for it. But critical race theory also tells us that, we've got to look at all these policies around us and see how they're affecting us. Slavery contributed to so much, and we've got to make those connections. How slavery contributed to our economic disenfranchisement, our political disenfranchisement, our judicial disenfranchisement, and how we're lagging in all those systems. This all deals with slavery. It all deals with different policies in place that disenfranchise us. We look at, busing system. The busing system has been around for 30 to 40 years, where we, ship black kids across the city. And that's all across the country. This busing system was just designed to ship black folks across the city, but not their white counterparts. So we got black folks being shipped all the way across the city. Also, what hurts, and just thinking about too, different systemic things. Like, more importantly, look at your property taxes. Your schools are sitting on property taxes. Whoever lives around those schools pay property taxes, and the higher and the better your neighborhood is, as far as the more money your neighborhood has, that's more money that goes to that school. Like I was saying, that property tax, those property taxes is really a part of a racial injustice, because black folks most likely are going to be living in a lower economic situation. So the schools that are going to be in black neighborhoods are going to get less money, all automatically. And that's a racial disenfranchisement that we have to look at and address in order to make it better. So we got to do different with our tax laws. There's an article in the paper about how Churchill Downs is not contributing any money to Jefferson County Public Schools, and about how it's sidestepping its taxes. Churchill Downs is in a pretty impoverished area. Those folks around there could use that tax money instead of those low-paying jobs that Churchill Downs keeps bragging about. Them buying all that property over there, they all that property that they just bought fell under the same tax system of all the other property that they have, which means they're paying little to no taxes over there on all that property in Churchill Downs, and all that property tax that they supposed to pay, supposed to go to JCPS. Yeah, so they robbing us. They robbing us. And the schools are surrounding us, so these rich people can keep more of their money and keep the area around them, impoverished. And of course, the area around them is going to be mostly black and brown. But of course, a critical race theory would say, hey, there's a connection between that. Something, it's more common sense, and that's why it's a joke that anybody's even upset about critical race theory, because it's been around for 40 years, and then it's haven't caused a problem. Opponents say critical race theory is going to unite black folks into a place where we'll be united, and then we'll overthrow the government and do a bunch of evil things to white folks, because it was teaching us to hate white folks. And my response to them is, when have you ever seen black folks trying to take over this country? Name me one black person that wants to take over this country. And, that usually stops them in their track, because you can't find one. Right, exactly. But you see a lot of other people who just try to take over the Capitol in January 6th of this year, and none of them were black. Okay, so who's trying to take over this country? So it's just a disguise. It's just an illusion. It's a cloud just put over, because what they really don't want is, what they say is, they don't want black empowerment, because then they lose white privilege, which is ingrained in the system that they created, and to say that it's not in there is just being disingenuous. And that's why most anti-CRT people, number one, don't even know what CRT is, never read anything about Kimberly Crenshaw, don't even know it's been around for 40 years, and they're walking around the planet quoting a bunch of liars, no books in their hand. All right, appreciate y'all, man. But yeah, definitely read anything by Kimberly Crenshaw. Just anything, for real. And also always make your own decisions, because it's most important.